There are moments in baseball that go far beyond the scoreboard. Moments that have nothing to do with wins or losses, statistics or standings. Moments that remind an entire sport, and everyone watching it, what it truly means to be human. What happened at Dodger Stadium on that night was one of those moments. And for those who witnessed it, it is something they will not forget for a very long time. Shohei Ohtani walked to the Red Sox dugout on his own. Nobody asked him to. Nobody instructed him to. No manager told him it was the right thing to do. He simply walked over, alone, because he wanted to know if the man he had accidentally hit in the head with a pitch was okay. That single act, quiet, unscripted, and deeply human, stopped an entire stadium in its tracks. And within hours, it had stopped the entire baseball world. The Dodgers were in the middle of a fiercely competitive game against the Boston Red Sox when the incident occurred. According to multiple sources inside the stadium, the atmosphere that evening had already been tense and electric in equal measure. Both teams were battling hard, and the crowd was deeply invested in every pitch, every swing, every movement on the field. It was in that charged environment that Shohei Ohtani released a pitch that immediately went wrong. The ball veered sharply off its intended path and struck Red Sox catcher Victor Contreras directly on the helmet. The sound of the impact echoed across the stadium. For a brief moment, everything stopped. Players on both benches rose to their feet. The crowd fell into an eerie, breathless silence. Contreras crumpled slightly at the impact, and the Red Sox training staff rushed onto the field immediately. According to eyewitnesses present at the game, Ohtani's reaction in the immediate seconds after the pitch was unlike anything they had seen from a player in that situation. There was no casual glance toward the plate. There was no waiting to see how the medical staff would handle things. According to those who were watching closely from the field level, Ohtani's face changed entirely the moment the ball made contact. The competitive intensity that had defined his expression throughout the game was gone. What replaced it was something far more raw and visible, genuine concern. The medical staff surrounded Contreras and the game paused, as it always does in these situations. The standard protocol began. Managers were notified, trainers worked quickly, and the umpires held the game while the situation was assessed. According to multiple inside sources, this is the moment when what happened next became truly extraordinary. Instead of waiting on the mound, or walking casually toward his dugout, or simply watching from a distance as most players do in these situations, Ohtani made a decision that no one on the field was expecting. He walked directly toward the Red Sox dugout. Not toward the plate where Contreras was being attended to, he understood the medical staff needed space, but toward the dugout, where he could wait and be present without interfering. According to those present, the moment Ohtani approached the Red Sox side, the entire atmosphere shifted. There were Dodger players watching from their own dugout. There were Red Sox players watching from theirs. There were coaches, umpires, and stadium staff who all paused what they were doing. Because what they were seeing was not something the sport prepares you for. It was not something covered in any team manual or professional protocol. It was simply one man choosing to go out of his way, in front of thousands of people and in the middle of a professional baseball game, to show that the person he had accidentally hurt mattered more to him than anything else happening on that field. It has been reported that when Ohtani reached the entrance of the Red Sox dugout, several Boston players and coaching staff were visibly taken aback. According to multiple sources, there was a brief moment of uncertainty, because this simply does not happen. Players do not cross over to the opposing team's dugout in the middle of a game without a reason. But Ohtani's reason was the simplest and most powerful one of all. He wanted to make sure Contreras was okay. According to those who were present, Ohtani stood near the dugout entrance with his head lowered slightly. He was not making a performance of the moment. He was not looking around at the cameras or the crowd. According to eyewitnesses, his entire focus was directed toward the Red Sox dugout, waiting for any update on Contreras' condition. Some who were standing nearby reported that Ohtani's hands were clasped together, and that he barely moved during the entire time he stood there. The stadium, for its part, had gone almost completely quiet. According to multiple sources at the game, this was a silence of a very different kind from the usual tension that grips a ballpark during an injury stoppage. This was the silence of thousands of people watching something unfold that they could feel in their chests. This was the silence of a crowd that collectively understood they were witnessing something that had nothing to do with baseball and everything to do with character. When Contreras was eventually helped to his feet and confirmed to be conscious and responsive, the stadium erupted. But the loudest and most sustained reaction, according to multiple eyewitnesses, was not for Contreras alone. It was the moment the crowd registered what Ohtani had been doing the entire time, standing at that dugout entrance, waiting, refusing to move until he knew the man he had hit was going to be okay. According to those present in the stands, the applause that followed was unlike the standard applause a crowd gives when an injured player rises. It carried a different weight. It was the sound of people reacting not just to relief, but to something that had genuinely moved them. Several fans who were interviewed after the game described being in tears. One fan was reported as saying that they had watched baseball their entire life and had never seen anything quite like what Ohtani did in those minutes. Inside the Red Sox dugout, the reaction was equally powerful. According to multiple sources with direct knowledge of what occurred, several Red Sox players approached Ohtani and shook his hand. Some reportedly expressed their appreciation directly to him. Even opposing coaches, who are professionally trained to maintain a certain emotional distance from their opponents during games, were seen nodding toward Ohtani with visible respect. According to those present, the interaction between Ohtani and the Red Sox staff and players in those moments lasted several minutes and was entirely genuine on all sides. What made the gesture even more remarkable, according to those who know Ohtani well, was that it was completely unplanned and entirely his own decision. This was not something a PR team orchestrated. This was not something the Dodgers organization had prepared for or discussed. According to multiple sources close to the team, no one in the Dodgers dugout instructed Ohtani to walk over. No coach pulled him aside and told him it would be a good look. It was a decision he made himself, in the moment, without thinking about cameras or optics or public perception. And that, according to those who have followed Ohtani's career closely, is precisely what makes it so consistent with who he is. Because the portrait that has emerged of Ohtani over the years, from his earliest days in Japan to his historic seasons in Major League Baseball, is of a man who carries a quiet and deeply serious sense of responsibility toward others. Not just toward his teammates. Not just toward his coaches and organization. But toward the game itself, and toward the people who play it alongside him, even when those people are wearing a different uniform. The reaction from fans around the world was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of the incident, footage and accounts of what Ohtani had done spread across social media platforms globally. The response from baseball fans, sports fans, and people who had never watched a single inning of baseball in their lives was remarkably unified. In Japan, where Ohtani remains one of the most celebrated athletes in the country's history, the reaction was particularly emotional. According to multiple reports from Japanese media, the story dominated sports coverage for days and prompted an enormous outpouring of pride and admiration. But the reaction was not limited to Japan or to baseball. Athletes from other sports commented publicly. Coaches and managers from across professional sports weighed in. People who simply saw the footage on their phones and felt something real in their chest shared it with their families and friends. Because what Ohtani did in those minutes was not a baseball story. It was a human story. And human stories have no language barrier, no national boundary, and no sport-specific audience. In the days that followed, there were many who attempted to explain what had made the moment so powerful. Sports commentators offered their analyses. Former players spoke about what it meant within the context of professional baseball culture. And all of them, in their own way, arrived at the same conclusion. What Ohtani did was simple. And that is precisely why it was so extraordinary. Because in a world where professional athletes are surrounded by image consultants and media strategies and carefully managed public appearances, a man simply walking across a field because he was worried about another man's well-being is not something people are prepared for. It is not something they expect. And when it happens, when it is genuine and unscripted and completely without calculation, it lands with a force that no press release or promotional campaign could ever replicate. According to multiple sources within baseball, the moment has already begun to be discussed among players across the league. Not as a talking point or a media story, but as a genuine example of the kind of person Ohtani is. The kind of competitor who, in the middle of everything that professional sport demands of him, still finds room to be something more important. A decent human being. There are players who chase records. There are players who chase championships. There are players who chase legacy. Shohei Ohtani is chasing all of those things, and by every measure, he is succeeding. But on that night, with the stadium watching and the cameras rolling and an entire sport holding its breath, the most important thing Shohei Ohtani chased was the simple reassurance that the man he had accidentally hurt was going to be okay. And in doing so, without planning it, without performing it, and without saying a single word that anyone outside that dugout could hear, he reminded an entire world of fans what greatness, at its truest and quietest, actually looks like. Thank you for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Moments like this deserve to be talked about. And if you want to see more stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss one.